Hey, it's Nee here. Thanks for joining me on this BRRRR financing strategy series. I'll be talking about different aspects of BRRRR financing, beginning with the end in mind, which will help you structure your BRRRR deals. In this first video, I'll illustrate why BRRRR is so effective with several examples. So what exactly is BRRRR? The traditional way of buying rental properties was to save up cash and put 20 to 25% down. The problem with this is your down payment now gets stuck in the property, and your ability to acquire properties is dependent on you being able to continually come up with down payment, which means that investing the traditional way is a very slow process. What if you didn't need to keep coming up with down payment to buy properties? That's where the BRRRR strategy comes into play. So BRRRR stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. It's basically a fix and hold strategy, but saying BRRRR is a more clever and catchy way of describing it. So let's go through it in more detail. The first one, the buy, means to purchase an undervalued or distressed property, usually with hard money, but you could also buy it with cash or conventional financing. The second step, rehab, you're making improvements to the property in order to add value and get it rent ready. The third one, rent, means that you're renting the property out to market standards, although you can also rent it out in different ways, like Airbnb, corporate rentals, rent by the room. The fourth step, refinance, this is what makes the BRRRR strategy so enticing. If you do it correctly, the refinance should get you back all of the capital, which is mainly your down payment that you put into the deal, and maybe even more if you got a great deal. And the last step, repeat. Use the cash that you got back from the refinance as a new down payment for your next deal. Now let's talk through some of these bullet points as well. A BRRRR is not much different from a flip. You do the same things up until the end when you refinance and keep the property instead of selling it. So it's a great way for flippers to transition to becoming landlords. You can also see how it preserves and recycles capital through the refinance and repeat steps. Also, if you use private or hard money to buy the property, you can even put in less down payment upfront than you would have the traditional way of buying rentals. People who use the BRRRR method to calculate ROI care about two things. How much money do you have left in the deal after the refinance, and how much the property is cash flowing at the end of the day. So you take the annual cash flow divided by the amount of money you have into the deal, and you'll get your ROI. I'll share examples of this on the next few slides, but you can see how you can get infinite returns if you have no money in the deal and you're cash flowing. And on that last point, you force appreciation by doing renovations on a property. Note that most properties have equity. It's just a matter of where it came from, either from appreciation or your down payment. Keep in mind that most of the BRRRR strategy revolves around conventional mortgages, so we'll walk through those examples. So diving straight into the numbers, I wanted to showcase the different ways of buying a rental property. This first example shows how most people buy rentals. You buy something stabilized, and then you put in a down payment. In this case, it's a pretty good deal that you got somewhere in the Midwest with these price points. It meets the 1% rule, which means that you're able to rent it for 1% of your acquisition cost each month, and 1% of $100,000 is $1,000. Here, your cash flow is simply your monthly rents minus your monthly expenses and mortgage payments. The mortgage payment is based on, in this example, a 4.5% interest rate, and it only includes principal and interest. The expenses include things like taxes, insurance, property management, capital expenditures, maintenance, and vacancy. So let's say you did a standard 25% down on a deal like this. To calculate the ROI, we take the annual cash flow divided by our investment, and then we get a 14.4% ROI. This is a pretty good deal, but we can do better. In this example, just notice a star. It's telling us that we did something new here, which is a remodel. By making the property look nicer, we usually get higher rents and thus higher cash flow, and often a higher ROI as well. So compared to the previous example, our rents are $400 higher, but in this case, our expenses also increased $30. So our cash flow only goes up $370. Why did our expenses go up? Well, some of our costs are dependent on the higher value and higher rent of the property, such as taxes, insurance, and property management fees. You would think that that would be more than $30 a month, But keep in mind that some expenses drop too. Since the property is renovated, our capital expenditures and maintenance costs drop, and we'll likely have better tenants or be able to fill the unit faster, which drops our vacancy costs as well. So overall, a net 30 in expenses increase. Now, while our ROI did go up, I put a downward arrow here to show that we had to put more cash into the deal, which eats up our capital for the next deal. Example 3, let's try adding a refinance to this, which starts becoming a BRRRR strategy. Same scenario as the previous one, except we're using a short-term hard money loan upfront to borrow 85% of the purchase and 100% of the rehab. And then we're doing a refinance to pay off, which is what rate and term means, the expensive short-term hard money loan. We'll dig into the different refinances in the next video. But here, because we're doing a refinance, we have to consider the after repair value, or ARV, which is the future value of the property once it's been renovated. So our loan to value, or LTV, here is 66%, which you get by dividing 105,000 by 160,000 ARV. But if you look at this, why did our cash flow go down? It's because the larger loan amount, right? You have a larger loan, and thus you have more payments, and thus having lower cash flow. But the ROI is still higher because you put less money in. So you can start seeing how the BRRRR strategy is so effective. Our ROI more than doubled because of it. However, we're still not using BRRRR to its full extent because we didn't get any cash out on the refinance. So let's try this with a cash out refinance. Again, cash flow goes down because of the higher loan amount, but at this point, we're getting all of our down payment money back when we refinance, so it's an infinite return. This is the true beauty of a BRRRR. Note that you can only do a cash out refinance after owning the property for 6 months. We'll dig into this more in the next video. Now, let me throw a wrench at you. What if the appraisal came back $10,000 lower than expected? Maybe we overshot the ARV, or maybe we didn't do as good of a job on the rehab to get the value up. Or maybe the market went down a little bit during the 6 months that we had to hold it for to do a cash out. All of these things happen in real life, and I just wanted to call that out as a risk to the BRRRR method. So now, because we can only do a cash out refinance up to 75% LTV on a single family house, we won't be able to get all of our money back. Would you guys still do this deal? I would, because that ROI is still pretty darn good. And that's the end of the BRRRR financing strategies part 1. In the next videos, we'll get some nice tips and tricks on how to maximize your BRRRR refinance.